with the human, with the person behind the impact, with the person behind the company. And it's always unscripted, it's unplanned. Karl, I have no idea what we're going to talk about.
I've got no bloody idea.
We'll be up here for about 12 minutes having a conversation. And then after about 12 minutes, we'll open it up for Q&A for just a few moments. This is going to be live streamed, is that right, media team? The Q&A will not be live streamed. Karl, just be aware that you might have a couple thousand people tuning into this.
Only.
Yeah, maybe $1 million, who knows? Without further ado, it's my distinct privilege, it's my pleasure, it's my honor to have this conversation with Karl. Let's welcome Karl to the stage.
Actually, the pleasure's all mine. I've been stalking you for a long time.
It's weird.
Hey, you wanted the genuine stuff? It's true.
Let's go. Well, look, before we get into that, if we get there, how many companies have you founded or co-founded?
I lost count, honestly.
Yeah.
I count exits 5, IPOs 2.
Yeah.
Started, I don't know, the kids did a survey once that I'd done business in 47 countries and been a director in more than 20.
Wow.
But I don't know how many I started.
Yeah. You literally can't keep track.
Well, there's always subsidiaries and there's bits and pieces and other stuff.
Yeah. And so out of the dozens, sounds like, of companies that you've started, you said you took 2 public, you had five acquisitions as exits. You're now on we don't even know if it's not your 9th company. It could be your 20th company, it could be your 15th company.
It was supposed to be the one that I never sold.
Yeah, Neutral Fuels.
Yeah.
So before we get into all of that, I'm curious why Neutral Fuels? An entrepreneur like yourself, who has ran so many companies and had so much success, you could be working on anything, right? You could be seizing any market opportunity out there. Why go after the challenge that you're trying to solve?
So in 2006, I sold an encryption company. And we went on holiday with my wife and my 3 kids and actually 2 maids. That's a good ratio.
Yeah.
And 1 big swimming pool. And we sat in the swimming pool for a week, really not doing much. And at the end of the week, my wife said, you should stop focusing on making money.
Yeah.
I said, well, that sounds a really strange thing, darling. And she said, well, actually, look at the 3 kids. Look at the world. Look at the grass. Look at the trees. We've got to save the planet.
Yeah.
I said, darling, nobody's ever made any money saving the planet. You look at all the tree huggers, all the bearded guys, no disrespect.
Thanks.
But it looks polite. It's a nice polite beard.
That's true.
And they never made any money doing it. And I said, well, how am I going to do that? She said, if you think you're so clever, you work out how to make money and save the planet.
Yeah.
And so we put together a Neutral Group the 2nd week in the swimming pool.
Wow.
I called 4 friends, asked them to join us. Didn't tell them what we were going to do. I just said, I'm putting the band back together. Do you want to come and join in? Put up a website, I put up the companies, and we built a structure.
Yeah.
Went back, and a week later, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just saving the planet. It's pretty broad.
Yeah.
A week later, a friend came over to dinner one night, and he said, I've got a really bad problem. My boss has just told me that it's my problem to work out what DHL's global carbon footprint is and what we're going to do about it.
Yeah.
I said, I've just started a company that's going to do that. He said, come on, you're lying. I said, no, we're really going to do that. I've got 4 people and we've got an office, and it's all going to be great. And he said, well, I'll introduce you to John Allen, CEO of DHL.
Yeah.
I'll tell him we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to step out of the room. If you survive, John's one of the smartest guys I know.
Yeah.
If you survive, then it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah.
After half an hour, John gave us an initial 1-year contract.
Yep.
I persuaded him to pay us a month in advance. I persuaded him to give us a floor of his office and second 6 staff to us. And I said, I'm really going to change this. And we did. And over the next 3 years, I ran DHL's global climate change program.
Yeah.
We measured their carbon footprint, which in the baseline year was the same as 46 countries put together.
Wow.
1 company.
Wow.
You think we've got a real big problem trying to affect climate change? 1 company, 46 countries equivalent.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting with the CEO over coffee, and I'm trying to persuade him to accept 5% reduction.
Yep.
How long did it take us to get the guys together in Paris to not agree on a 5% reduction? Yeah. Anyway, so sitting with him, and we agreed that we were going to measure it and that we were going to have a 5% reduction, and we're actually going to measure stuff and we're going to tie it in with it. Anyway, ran all of that stuff, got involved with 2 biodiesel programs there, and the last project they asked me to do was to look at moving DHL's air fleet to Dubai.
Wow.
So I went and met the guys in Dubai and said, would you like a big number of aircraft here? 423 aircraft DHL had at the time. And they said, well, don't know, but what do you do? And I said, I do climate change stuff.
Yeah.
He said, we need to know what the carbon footprint is of Dubai and what it's going to be in 10 years and how many new power stations do we need? The answer was 2, and if you actually do some energy saving, you're going to save 40%, you won't need the 2 power stations. Having done that, we wrote the Green Buildings Code for Dubai. Having done that, they said, well, what are we going to do about transport? Did a joint project with McKinsey, looked at how we were going to do transport, and concluded that biofuels was the only answer.
Yep.
Presented that back to His Excellency Sami Al-Khamsi, who runs Dubai government's economic department, and he said to me, Karl, that's a fantastic conclusion, but what the hell am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
This is the fossil fuel capital of the world, and your conclusion is we don't want fossil fuels. So, well, that's honesty for you.
That's true.
And so I said to him, well, if you give us a license, you get us a license to do this, we'll put together a biofuels industry for you.
Yeah.
And strangely, he managed to do that.
Yeah.
We had to create a new licensing category. Nobody had ever done it before. And we became the first licensed biofuels facility anywhere in the whole of the Middle East.
Wow.
And that was just simply crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So for somebody who isn't familiar with biofuels,
Yeah.
can you explain to us what you're doing?
So we make a natural replacement for diesel fuel.
Yep.
And if you imagine when you went to school, fossil fuels are called fossil fuels because they're made out of fossils, which is dead animals and plants that died 300 million years ago and sunk to the bottom and were compacted and heated and compacted, turned into gloopy stuff which is called tar. Yeah. And that tar is refined into oil and it's refined into petroleum products. Yeah. Well, we do all that stuff in 4 hours.
Wow.
So you get
well put.
animal and plant oils, and we sort of crush them and heat them and do all that stuff. And in 4 hours, we get something which is actually a fresh version of fossil fuel, except, it's only made out of waste.
Yep.
So this is animals and plants, and we only do plants, that have already served their primary purpose, which is cooking you French fries.
Yeah.
Or chicken McNuggets. You have a choice.
Yep. So tell us, so you just talked about chicken McNuggets. Tell us about your partnership with McDonald's and how it works.
McDonald's were fabulous. I went to see them after Sammy said we can have a license.
Yeah.
And I went to see McDonald's and said, you guys know how to cook stuff, so you got good quality control. Please can I have your cooking oil?
Yeah.
And they said, no. Who are you? I said, well, I wrote DHL's climate change program for the world. And they said, oh yeah, we need one of those.
Yeah.
Go and see our management team in Hong Kong. I went and saw them, and they said, yeah, we've got 37 countries. We need a climate change program, sustainability strategy, and everything. Can you do something about it? Okay. 5 years later, we left them with a system monitoring 37 countries, a software implementation, quarterly targets of near enough 5% per year actual reduction, saving money at the same time. And after about 6 months into the 5 years, they said, oh yeah, you can have the oil. Yeah. But we want this waste cooking oil into biofuels program. It has to really work anywhere. So do it in Dubai because that's really hard. Yeah. I said, okay. No subsidies, no government assistance. In fact, government not really understanding what we were doing at the time. So we came up with a different business model. We came up with a new way of collecting oil. We came up with a special oil container that's exactly the dimensions of a McDonald's restaurant. So there are minimum dimensions inside the restaurant. There's a height of their oil collection cart that they have. So we had to make that height. And the final test for my wonderful piece of, I admit it, plastic. Yeah. Recyclable 100% plastic that can take 160 degrees centigrade hot oil. You're not supposed to handle it at that temperature. Was they insisted, fill it up full of oil, which is 120 liters of oil, weighs 130 kilograms, put it in the back of a McDonald's delivery truck, drive down the road, and then drop it on every side and video the result. If it spills one drop, we're rejecting it. Wow. Yeah. So that's how come we ended up with the most butch-looking oil container you've ever seen in your life. This thing is really beefy. It's great.
And so we talked about this earlier, but McDonald's is now running completely neutral?
In the UAE for 8 years, every drop of fuel they've used has had no fossil fuel component in it at all. Yeah. And that's now 13 million kilometers. It's 6.5 times to the moon and back, or some crazy number like that. And the numbers are, I don't know, it's thousands and thousands of tons of carbon dioxide saved.
Can we give Karl a round of applause?
I'm still trying to prove to my wife that I can make money and save the planet at the same time.
You're proving it to all of us.
I'm getting there.
So, Karl, what's hardest about this? You know, some people would look at a veteran entrepreneur like yourself and say, okay, of course you could do that. This doesn't, you can do anything. But I know that this is a difficult journey. I mean, what's been hardest along the way?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, if you read the internet, which is where all knowledge and expertise lies, they'll tell you that biofuels, and certainly biodiesel, has less energy than regular diesel. Yeah. It'll mess up your engine. And I was sitting in a conversation with a very, very well-known Swedish furniture manufacturer last week, who said, if you put more than 7%, the engine won't start.
Wow. And
I said to him, but that McDonald's truck that's going past the window is running on 100%. That engine's definitely working. Yeah. It's the ignorance, and I suspect some negative publicity from the industry, from the motor industry, that doesn't want to accept it. Our fuel has the same or more energy as regular diesel. It doesn't have cold weather problems. It makes the engine last longer, which means there's less servicing required on the engine. Yeah. So this is bad news for the fossil fuel industry, and it's very bad news for the truck industry. Yeah. Our oldest truck, we just retired one at 1.5 million kilometers. Wow. I mean, that's a pretty useful engine life. So the toughest thing has been having to educate everybody. Yeah. I've been very surprised by how many people will run a fleet of 500 trucks and they don't know how an internal combustion engine works. Mm-hmm. They don't know what the difference is between a petrol engine and a diesel engine. And of course, as an engineer, I love telling them, which they hate. So, you know, it's actually not upsetting people is one of my big challenges in life.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job here. So, Karl, as I think some people in the room, we have Sanjay here as well, they might say, okay, biodiesel is great, right? Taking waste, turning it into fuel, but electric is the future. What's your response to that?
First of all, I drive a Tesla, so I'm delighted with it. Fabulous, best car I've ever had. Yeah. Went to the Tesla factory recently. Electric is 100% the right answer, except that there aren't any real electric trucks. Yeah. Elon's made 2 or 3, and they actually recently branded one with DHL logo. I was very proud to see. Yeah. When I was at DHL, we had 200,000 vehicles. I went to Volkswagen in Wolfsburg at the bequest of the parent company, Deutsche Post, and asked them to make us 59,000 electric vehicles to replace the 59,000 electric Volkswagens and Caddies that we had. And they said it wasn't a big enough order, it's a new technology that they didn't understand, and it really wasn't going to work. Yeah. So DHL said, you know what, we'll build it ourselves. They've now got 5,000 electric vehicles in Germany off their own production line. Incredible. And that's what's going to happen to the motor industry if they don't take this seriously. Yeah. So yes, I completely agree electric's the right answer, but in the year when we had 200,000 DHL trucks, we managed to buy 8 electric trucks. Wow. And that was 8% of the annual output of the biggest electric truck manufacturer. It's going to take 2-3 decades to get there. Time. In the meantime, I can take you to net zero tomorrow on a fuel made from waste. Yeah. So go and knock yourself out. Buy electric trucks all the time. But in the meantime, while we're trying to fix that problem, let's fix the one now. Yeah. Reduce particulates by 50%. Reduce asthma incidents. Reduce smog. We can do all that today. Yeah, you're doing it. But I think it's an and, right? And.
What? So let's switch gears a little bit.
Really? Faster.
What's something that people get wrong about you?
Oh gosh, that's a horrible question. They make the mistake of asking me to sing, because you really don't want that to happen.
But you are in a rock band.
I've been a singer in a rock band, this time round for 8 years.
Does anybody want to hear Karl sing?
Okay, that was a really nice plump, thank you. Tomorrow night I have a video, which actually some of you will enjoy more than others, but anyway, it's only 2 minutes, I edited it. But I'll be singing for you tomorrow night.
Nice.
And for any of you that wants to spin through Dubai on the 15th of November, I'll comp you all tickets. We're playing the tennis stadium, be a fairly big gig, and it's going to be a lot. It's going to be the first net zero event in the whole of the Middle East. Wow. So we're putting on a gig, flying in bands from different places, calculating the carbon footprint. Yep. We're providing all the fuel for all the sound and all the lights with 100% biofuel, so it'll be net zero on the sound and lights. All the hotels, transport, flights will be calculated. That will then be turned into a number of trees. We're thinking 247 hectares of trees in the Philippines, that we're going to reforest a whole bunch of trees there to offset the carbon footprint of our concert. First net zero event, and that goes into this year's strategy, which is all the fuel that we produce, whether it's pure biofuel or mixed with other fuels, all of that will then turn into trees. So the whole of our production this year will be net zero. And me coming here will be net zero. Everything will be net zero. And this is not bloody hard.
Yeah, simple. Yeah. Karl, did you do? Yeah. You don't seem to do anything small. That's the killer takeaway. But what I want to acknowledge, this will be my last question, is in so many ways you're larger than life, right? And what you're going after, you're really trying to change the game. You're changing an industry, and it's at that level of impact. And yet, you come to this community with so much humility. I'm curious, what keeps you humble?
I guess it's all the old stuff. I came from nowhere.
Yeah.
I was given every opportunity. I was given the choice to accept opportunities. But every opportunity that I was given, I said yes. But right from my mum taking 3 jobs to pay for me to go to a decent school, through to my neighbor, who I still don't know his name, who donated money so that I could go to a really good school. Right the way through to being sponsored through my degree by Philips, who didn't really have to do that. Through to my last boss, this will embarrass a lot of you, not me, my last boss in 1989, who said, Karl, you are unmanageable, which I took as a compliment and the incentive to start my next company. But all those people have actually provided opportunities, and I've just said yes. I don't actually think that I created much of that. I just said yes. And my best advice to loads of people is just grab every opportunity that comes your way. Grab it with both hands, pull on it, and really pull hard.
I love it, Karl. I think that's brilliant advice to end.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've got to take questions. No.
We have time for 2 questions. So, Christiana, excited to dive in. The dessert was marvelous. Thank you for that. How much did we enjoy the dessert tonight? Actually, I want to start the very first day of the program. We did an activity. We can't tell you the details. It's kind of a secret. How you showed up as a leader within this cohort immediately was like unreal. I haven't seen that before. To me already, we haven't known each other for too long, but I feel like you're a remarkable leader. I'm curious, what's your philosophy on leadership?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm very humbled to be here. When I received the call from Evan telling me, I thought, yeah, there's no way. Like, we're a relatively young startup, and as a CEO, quite inexperienced compared to the likes of Karl. I haven't founded, hundreds, well, not 100, but many, many companies. This is my first startup. But my philosophy has always been it's to serve. Yeah. It's to find solutions to move everyone forward collectively. I mean, it's funny because ever since I was a kid, I was identified as a leader. Not that I tried to be out there, but ever since primary school, I was always, chairperson of the student council or head prefect at my school, if anybody's familiar with Harry Potter, very Hogwarts. Yeah, but I mean, honestly, I really felt like I wanted to be in a space where I could, there were people that I could speak for and causes that I could help and move forward. And so I think during those exercises, it was kind of like, I felt like there was a bit of a stagnation in the room, and we needed to move forward. So I just naturally
Took like 10 seconds, Christiana.
maybe it's instinct, right?
Yeah,
People
totally.
say, you follow your gut. So there was something in the gut that said, hey, we need to move forward.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of courage to do that, and then maybe not in that situation, but in life.
Right.
And I'm curious, I wasn't at your dinner table. I would actually love to know your response to the question. If there's an individual who influenced you to put you on the path that you're on and the trajectory that you're on now, who influenced you the most?
Yeah, that's the key angle in that question, because when we say who influenced you most in your life, there are so many people, and I think half of the table said their mother. And I definitely, hold her in very high regard in terms of somebody who influenced me. But the person who really bent my path towards entrepreneurship was actually a Thai business guy who, when I was in my last year of high school trying to figure things out, and I had a part-time job working as a sales girl at Ralph Lauren, and I had this Thai couple come in that were some of my best customers. And initially I was thinking, I'm just, a great salesperson. Yeah, they keep coming back because they like my style. But then I realized that they were asking me questions about, what do you want to do with your life? And, what do you want to do after you graduate? They found out that I was head prefect. But, I think what they said, especially this guy called Ponkit, he actually is a real estate founder of a company called Siam Futures in Thailand that does a lot of open-air shopping malls, and including the Mega Banya in Bangkok. I don't know if people are aware of that one, which has the biggest IKEA in Southeast Asia. So after a few meetings, they revealed themselves as these amazing business people, entrepreneurs, and said, we saw a spark in you, and you're thinking about what you want to do with your life. Have you thought about entrepreneurship? And I was thinking, what? I mean, as a student leader, usually, and I did a lot of debating, the trajectory people put me on was, you're going to go and study law and be a politician or a lawyer or something like that. And I thought, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But there was something inside of me that felt like, that's not quite right. And when he said that, I was like, that's interesting, tell me more. And through the course of a year or two, he showed me and told me a lot of stories about his business. Even at one point brought myself, my sister, and her then boyfriend to Thailand because his wife is an avid diver to get our diver's license, and also then show us his construction site, his other mentees and that sort of thing, and just to have somebody really believe in you and tell you that this is a pathway and don't be afraid of it, and just stay open-minded to it, really bent my path in that direction. And then from then on, I had the courage to actually choose to study PR and journalism, which to my Asian parents, was like a shock. Like, where's my lawyer or doctor or accountant? But I haven't regretted that, because I felt like, if I want to start a business, what are my key skills that I can really lean on and would be important as an entrepreneur? And one that I identified was storytelling, and this was the degree that I felt like was going to be very useful for me to learn about that and to have access to that. And here I am.
So then, from all of that, you have an incredible mentor who put you on this path towards entrepreneurship. You learned the art of storytelling. Why marvelous foods? Before we get into what it is, why do you care about the future of protein and the future of plant-based food?
Right. So it's always been a goal of mine to provide value in the community that I'm in, whether it's in the room or in, at the time I grew up in New Zealand, so in that community. And what that brought me, the path that put me on was actually after studying journalism and thinking, I'm a typical immigrant child as well. I can write things in English. This is my mother tongue, having experienced all of those things growing up. I was actually hired by the New Zealand Tourism Board on our kind of year's most revered like internship because of my Chinese skills. So then, I thought, okay, well, I can provide value to the community here because tourism is a huge industry in New Zealand, and the Chinese market was a huge emerging market that people needed to really understand. Like, what we did was a lot of work with business owners. I became the first China media advisor for China based in New Zealand to talk to industry about how to market to China, how to cater for Chinese travelers and that sort of thing. But after about 6 years of kind of being groomed to be a China expert, I started to feel like a bit of an imposter because I never actually lived in China. So then that brought me to China. And then when I came to China, I realized actually the bigger value that I could bring instead of just focusing on sustainable tourism, which I ended up working for a sustainable tourism company in Beijing, fantastic, called Wild China, head of marketing. But I had a lot of health problems, and I realized actually there was a lot of work to be done in the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy around food. And impact, and that's why I pivoted and became passionate about that. And so it started definitely from a health perspective, and it was very personal. But then I started realizing a lot of my clients naturally were vegan. And it got me, really interested in that. Like what that was all about. I had heard before that there were environmental reasons why people were vegetarian, but I never really spent the time to kind of look into what that meant. And now we're fortunate that there are a lot more studies done about it, or unfortunate because the problem is a little bit more urgent than it was before. But that then really solidified my conviction to create a platform and kind of use the original first product, pioneer product, which is Yayo, which you guys have tried, as like a slingshot to be able to produce other products and put it on the same track to market testing for for specifically the China market that we've chosen, scaling, because there are production standards unique to China. I mean, those of you who may have experienced importing into China maybe might know about that. So thinking if we do it from the inside, we're going to have those advantages as well. And then, of course, culture. So what you experience tonight is very much how we believe in showcasing our product. We, don't necessarily want the first interaction with the consumer to be just they see it on a supermarket shelf, but they've tried it at their favorite, restaurant. They've tried it at their favorite CrossFit gym, after a workout, or saw, someone post it about it on social media that they follow, that sort of thing, and create this positive feeling around plant-based foods. Because, if I'm allowed to spin off on that, plant-based eating is an intrinsic part of a lot of cultures in Asia. In fact, China actually created the first plant-based meats about 1,000 years ago in the Tang Dynasty. So it's not necessarily like a new thing, but the trend that we're seeing with the increased consumption of meat and dairy is that, the culture now is that that's what's trendy. So, what we see is if we really want to change that sort of trajectory, then we really need to change the culture and make it positive and get people kind of to have a positive relationship again with plant-based eating, not thinking it's just for poor people in the countryside or just for Buddhists and grandmas, but that it's cool, it's nourishing as well. I think I mentioned earlier and to some people before that meat eaters have grown up understanding how to get protein from many different sources like fish, chicken, duck, beef, pork. But if we look at ready-to-eat plant-based protein products in the supermarket, it's mostly just either soy or wheat-based. Now we're seeing a little bit more pea, which is good, but there's got to be a lot more diversity there, and it's there in nature, and we're really passionate about getting people to discover that, and that's what Marvelous is about as a platform.
So how can we help? And in order for us to help, right? You got to raise your hand and talk about what's hardest.
Yes.
But how can this community rally behind you with whatever you might be struggling with right now as you take Marvelous across China?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, this is my first business. There are a lot of things that I need to learn about, fundraising strategy and investment kind of relations, and also scaling. And I was speaking to Paloma earlier today about kind of how to do product development in a more kind of structured way, because I approached this completely like out of my own kitchen at the beginning and turned into a mad scientist where I was just sleeping on the floor of the kitchen testing pH levels like every other hour. Literally, I have a picture of my sleeping bag and sleeping mat. And I was, at this point, my central kitchen was in 798, which is an art district in Beijing, converted like warehouses. So if you can think, they used to make military artillery, like, in these warehouses, very cold. I had my sleeping mat and like my sleeping bag, and but it was fun. But I think we can grow a lot faster if we can hire professional help in this way, or have advice and get access to these things. So I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to be able to reach out and raise my hand for help amongst such amazing people who want to change the world.
Yeah. Christiana, I think we are so grateful. We are so lucky to have you as a member of this community. Anything we can do to help you succeed, we're going to do it. You're clearly going to do it on your own, but if we can help, make it a little bit faster, a little bit easier, we're here for you. Let's give Christiana.
Thank you.
So we have time. mentors was at the very first Unreasonable Institute in 2010. Is one of the most remarkable entrepreneurs that I have the privilege considering a friend.
At the mansion, we used to...
We called it a mansion. They tore it down 2 years later because of asbestos. It was not a mansion, but we referred to it as that. But Kamran's been a longtime friend and an incredible mentor. So let's welcome Kamran to the Fireside. So Kamran, we don't have enough time. And what I'd like to talk about is...
That's a polite way of saying I ramble on and I talk too much.
Kamran does talk a lot because he has a lot to say. I'd like to start with what you consider to be your greatest success and the story behind it.
Well, actually, the many things that happen in our lives, the ups and downs, we may not appreciate the significance of that, but as time goes by, the realization comes out that, oh my God, I'm so lucky I failed there, and it was so fantastic that this thing didn't work out. It was going to be a disaster. I was going to really do crazy things, or even when you have had too many successes or whatever, it gets to your head and you become a monster and you think you're
Invincible.
I try to use proper language. Your stuff doesn't stink or whatever. Are we on HBO rules or CBS?
HBO, you're fine.
So you think your shit doesn't stink or whatever. And reality is that universe has a plan for every one of us, and while we may not understand it as we are going through the ups and downs, it takes a while to recognize that. And probably the biggest success that I have had in my life was recognizing about that and just being cool and chill. You know, don't get indigestion, don't lose a minute of sleep. Just say, hey, I do my best, let the chips fall wherever they do, and this might be yet another part of my journey to learn something more.
Yeah.
And as you look back, you see you learned so much. And right now I feel like all my years as a hungry immigrant trying to make it at I came to US in 1972, and 1979 the Iran revolution happened, and 1980 you tried to go and raise $1.8 million as a 26-year-old boy from Iran at the height of hostage crisis, and I did not want to have US citizenship, and I didn't want to have Iranian citizenship, so I was a stateless person for 5 years. So imagine the balls you have to go and talk to the VCs and say, give me 1.8 million so I could go and develop my MVP, minimum viable product, and we will see if it works or not. If it does work, I need more. If not, too bad. And they say, you have an accent, where are you from? You say, I was born in Iran, and the next question is, why are you taking our people hostage? And, Silicon Valley has come a long way, but it used to be that they would say, well, immigrants make good engineers, maybe good engineering managers, but you are 26, you want to be CEO, and shouldn't CEO of a company be 6 foot tall and be white and be handsome? And I guess so, but I'm not, and whatever. But you go through those years, you go through immigrant struggles, you go through entrepreneurship.
What happened with that company?
94 meetings with VCs, they said no. And 95th one was stupid enough to say, sure, why not? We got our first 1.8 million. We raised another 6, 7, 8 million after that. And 3 years later, HP wanted to buy the company for 50 million, but we sold it to Tektronix for $75 million. And I wasn't even 30 years old. I was a long time ago.
And that was a long time ago.
Long time ago. And So all those years as an entrepreneur, all those years as a venture capitalist, we had a $350 million fund investing as a global fund in high-tech companies in US, in Japan, in China, India, Israel, Singapore. All of that was all training. And then the 23 years of philanthropy that we were doing was all training, and then my years at UN was training. I was for 2 years co-chair of UN GATE, United Nations Global Alliance for Use of ICT in Development. I look back and I say, all of that was training to do what I'm doing right now, which is the biggest initiative I've ever tried to do, and it is to help create 10 million innovation jobs, jobs of future, across 40 countries in Africa, in Middle East, in Southeast Asia, and in Central Asia. And I learned a big lesson, for example, from our own foundation work. My wife and I started that 23 years ago in '96, and by 2009, before I joined UN, we had 2,000 employees in 25 countries. Our annual budget was 45 million. And, we had created a monster of an organization, but the lesson I learned from that is this time I'm not going to go and hire a lot of people and do everything ourselves. A big lesson as an entrepreneur, you learn if there is something out there, go and leverage from it. Why do you want to reinvent the wheel? So I looked at the resources, I looked at the thing, and I said, well, I've been mentor at the Unreasonable Institute. How can I help Unreasonable to have bigger impact, bigger scale? I have been the last 4 or 5 years, ever since I started this project, 4 years, a global innovation advisor to 500 startups. Let me not go and do operational. Let's help them invest in 1,800 companies in 60 countries. At Seed Stars, at Tech Startup Grind, at about 50 different organizations. I did a very simple math. If I change my own business model, instead of I work my ass off for 3, 4, 5 years, get, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 500 million, whatever I could get out of that business, to go and give it to our foundation so that we could have the impact. If I took a fraction of that and help amazing organizations like Unreasonable Group, Unreasonable Capital, Unreasonable Impact, have their impact, and convince some huge organizations that they should deploy their money in different ways. So, like what organization? One of them is World Bank. I met Jim Young Kim at TED conference about 3.5 years ago, and he had an amazing plea to the TED community that why don't you come and help us get World Bank be different. So I took that seriously, and I started to go to World Bank, and happy to say that after so many workshops, arranging these things with all the chief economists of World Bank, the first chief economist was for MENA region, who agreed to work with us on a moonshot project for MENA region. Then Vice President World Bank for Africa, for MENA agreed with that, and then he got promotion to become Vice President World Bank for Africa, and then we convinced the Chief Economist of World Bank for Africa, then Vice President for Central Asia. So we have this moonshot project, at least for 3 big regions of money of World Bank is going to go to do what? Within the next 11 years, by 2030, World Bank money would go so that every human being within these regions would have access to electricity, every human being would have access to broadband, all of this free or low cost. Every person would have access to a local cloud, so the issues of, Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud or, NSA is spying on everything, or China is spying on anything, all of those go away, so you can have local cloud. And the access to free or low-cost, open vertical data, whether it is agricultural data, weather data, traffic data, pandemics, epidemics. And you look at this and you say, okay, this, heavens forbid, if it becomes acceptable for the whole globe, it's amazing. But World Bank budget for Africa alone is $19 billion a year. Its budget for Middle East is $6 billion. Between just the two of them, it's $25 billion a year.
Yeah.
If we get a chance to divert 10% of that towards this, that's $2.5 billion. A hell of a lot less work on me going a few hours every quarter to do advocacy.
Can I ask just a question going back, because I think a lot of people here haven't heard your story. How many companies have you started?
10. Was altogether between 1980 to last company that I started was 2000.
How many did you take public?
3 of them went public, and they all became unicorn. Each one of them was worth $1 billion or more. Altogether, between 3 of them was $8 billion. Cirrus Logic, Neomagic, and Centillium Communications. But 3 of them were acquired at different levels. And then 3 of them failed. I got fired twice. And one of them is a zombie. It hasn't died. Even though we started in 1999, it goes up and it comes down and goes up. I stopped being his chairman, founder. I gave all my shares to the founder, and I said, you do whatever you do with it. I'm tired. I've got better things to do. Our hopes go up. Our revenues get to 30, 40 million. We do fundraising at a few hundred million. Everything looks good, and then boom, a year later we miss the numbers, we miss everything. The valuation comes down, it gets recapped, everything. I went through that for 10 years, and I said, that's enough.
I've never seen somebody so happy about that. So, Kamran, I just wanted, when I asked you your greatest success, you said that your greatest success was, in essence, one of your greatest failures, or the biggest lessons that you received, and it wasn't the IPOs and the acquisitions. And
it's the recognition that, hey, I'm going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. Universe has a different plan for all of us. And
can you tell? I know it, but can you tell that story of when you were humbled?
Which one? I've been humbled many times.
One of the times you got fired.
Okay.
And we have just about 3 minutes.
Okay. So in I have to make sure I remember. 1989, we had just taken Cirrus Logic public. It's going through the roof. Everything is phenomenal. I'm sleeping, and I have this crazy dream that I'm reading Wall Street Journal, and the paper feels a little bit funny, and it is on the front page. There is an article about the automotive industry, and there is an ad or picture there, and in my dream, my finger goes and I touch it, and it becomes color video, and the ad wakes up and whatever, and I said, holy shit, that sounds good. I woke up and I started to take notes, and I started to, my wife said, what the hell is wrong with you? I said, I've got an idea for my next company. I'm going to go and build this new thing that you don't need to use keyboard, you can use your finger, you can use your stylus, and it has no buttons, and whatever. That was the basics of a Momenta computer, and because of the first 2 big successes, investors would not dare to say no to me, and I went to them and, with crazy things, said each one of you put $1 million up, and I can't tell you what it is, but in a few months when I figure out what it is, I come back and tell you, and if you want, you can put 4 more million in, otherwise I kick you out. And 5 investors signed up to go with that, whatever. So we raised $40 million rather quickly, and
this was 1989.
1989 we started. November of 1991, we announced the product. Any of you have access to Google? Do a Google search for Momenta computer. It was iPad, 18 years ahead of iPad. It actually was iOS 10 that had no buttons. Momenta had the no buttons in 1991. We were on the cover of 20 magazines. I got some like 10 awards as the, MVP of the year, the craziest, biggest future of computing, all of those things. And I got orders from the distribution channels for $300 million. I thought I better be conservative. I cut it back to by 2/3. I told my board that it would be 100 million, and I thought that was very reasonable. And first quarter, we shipped 5,000 units. We were selling them at $5,000, so $25 million quarter. Everything sounds great. Second quarter, they all started to come back because people didn't know how to turn it on. You don't have a button now. How does this thing work? And the things do not work, and there are bugs and all sorts of problems. Whatever. If I knew Tom Chi at that time, I would have known to do a bit more of rapid prototyping, and we then ship 5,000 of them sight unseen and being so stupid. But so. It was April 1st, 1992. I came to work, and I had hired amazing team. One of them was Chief Operating Officer of Apple, was my COO, and I went to work and I saw there is a board meeting going on, and I said, I didn't call a board meeting, what the hell is going on? They said, he did, my COO talked to the board, called up a board meeting, I'm fired. And I thought this was April 1st joke, April Fool. But they literally said, pack your bags and go. Yeah. I mean, it was a crazy thing. And obviously, I went through all the ups and downs, sadness, all of the things. But, a year later, I bounced back, and I found out that during this year, I traveled all over the world. I studied many different religions, many different cultures, languages, or whatever, and I found out that, goddamn, we are all the same. And any country I went to, they said that the race was the best. They may not admit it to you, but go back and look at any country you are from. You will see that your books say your history is the greatest. You are that. Any religion I studied said that they were the chosen one and they were supposed to go to heaven or whatever. And you know that they can't all be right, so obviously they're all wrong. Yeah. But I said, what the shit is all of this going on or whatever? Why don't we try to help create peace in the world by letting everybody know that we are all the same? This is all nonsense. Corrupt politicians, corrupt religious people are trying to promote these things to create wars for us. But right at that time, this was 1992, internet was coming along, and all of a sudden I said, okay, this is it. I should go and put all of my efforts into bring internet and bring computing accessible to everyone. So the next 7 companies that I started, were all on that part. NeoMagic was the first system in a chip that allowed all of the multimedia features, 2D, 3D graphics, audio, video be in one chip. So we went and worked with IBM from day one. I didn't wait till end of it, and IBM introduced a ThinkPad based on this. We went and worked with Sony. We got Sony to develop Vio with this. So this time really our first year revenue was 41 million, second year was 125 million, went through the roofs. My 6th company invented ADSL. The last company invented 4G technology. So
thanks for doing that. That's why we have internet right now. Kamran, thank you.
It's just what realization goes on, that you have to do something, and once you build the basic things, you start to say, okay, now where is the future? And the jobs of future are computational thinking, algorithmic thinking. So we have huge programs to go and educate kids from young age. Any of you who are not familiar, probably the next unicorn in our family is going to be Polyup, Polyup, polyup.com, check it out. And I'm very proud to say that I have had very little to do with it. It's much better my wife. It would be her unicorn, she's driving it, and it's an amazing company, So.
Kamran, we're we're at time, unfortunately. There are stories. Kamran has flown an airplane into a volcano. I know
Live
that.
volcano.
Live volcano with lava. I know your vision now is 10 million jobs. I think if anybody can do it, it is so clearly you.
It's all of us. It's Unreasonable team coming and making these, jobs of future happen, save the planet, do the right kinds of things. They're all going to be high impactful jobs.
Well, one of the reasons we're all going to succeed is with your mentorship. Undoubtedly. Thank you, Kamran.
By the way,